Great Britain in the late 19th century never runs out of crimes and mysteries. The headline of the newspaper reads that another young boy has fallen victim to a serial homicide that has been happening across London. This boy marks the 7th victim of the crime, but also an opportunity for the reader of our newspaper, William James Moriarty, an adopted son of the noble Moriarty family. As a self-proclaimed crime consultant, William finds it too interesting not to discuss with his younger brother, Louis James Moriarty. He points out pieces of information that they can use as clues to find the killer. First, the boy's parents' occupations. Each works as a clocksmith, a hatter, a jeweler, a horsekeeper, and a tailor. There's one whose parents are a mystery. The boy himself worked as a messenger. Based on the information, William draws the conclusion that all the parents work closely with people of the upper class, considering the businesses of the parents are the ones rich people often engage with. Also, it isn't uncommon for the sons to assist their fathers in running their family businesses. As for the messenger boy, he could have been placed in a club targeted at the upper classes. So that only leaves one boy, the latest victim. He's reported to be a homeless orphan. Louis questions how he could have been mixed in this situation. William admits that the nobleman and the homeless are two groups that are far removed. But due to this fact, this orphan may be one clue that may lead them to the culprit. In the meantime, the oldest biological son of the Moriarty family, Albert James Moriarty, is paying a visit to Eden, the tailor he regularly buys his suits from, to express his condolence. Apparently, the tailor's son, Roddy, was one of the victims in the serial homicide. Albert advises Eden to take a rest after what he's been through, but although Eden is still mourning, he insists on keeping on working because it keeps him busy enough to not think about his grief. Suddenly his pupils dilate as he looks deep at the fabric scissors in front of him. Then, out of nowhere, in a threatening tone, he says that he wishes he knew who killed Roddy. Later that day, a little boy is seen busking at a street intersection, playing his accordion. From the look of it, he's still a beginner, judging by the struggle in his face and the wrong notes he keeps playing. While still busy mastering his accordion with all his might, the boy is approached by William, who gives him money. It's enough to make the boy's eyes sparkle. William then asks the boy to go with him, promising him to give him more money. They end up in a restaurant where William treats the boy with a meal. As the boy eagerly eats, William says that he could already guess that it wasn't his by his way of playing. The boy gets scared for a moment, thinking that William is a cop, but William quickly refutes it. Once the boy feels safe again, he explains that the accordion used to be the possession of Cass, his friend. Cass turns out to be the one peculiar victim of the serial murder due to the fact that he made a living by busking and almost had no way of coming into close contact with wealthy people. He used to play his accordion not far away from where William met Cass's friend. After the boy finishes the meal, William decides to examine the place he was talking about. He looks around and finds a building that catches his attention. The building has a big window that faces directly to Cass's usual busking place, and it's owned by a clubhouse named the Gastros Club. Back at his manor, William reports these findings to Louis and Albert. The latter immediately recognizes the club. It's often visited by the wealthy. Albert himself has acquaintances who are members there. Therefore, by using Albert's connection to get a referral, William decides to visit the clubhouse the next day. Immediately, his attention goes to the person sitting by the window. He asks the waiter who he is. According to the waiter, he's the Earl of Argleton, who's also one of the club's founding members. Whenever he came, he would sit by that window if the seat was empty. A few moments later, William approaches the Earl to have a talk. The Earl doesn't seem to mind. However, it doesn't take long for him to start getting nervous, as William correctly guesses the tailor who made his suit, which is Eden. It doesn't stop there. William keeps guessing other things related to his daily wear, where his ring, hat, and pocket watch were made. The Earl confirms all of William's guesses, and he gets more nervous each time. The moment William mentions the stable where he's placing his horses, the Earl becomes speechless. Of course, these things William has managed to guess are related to the victims of the serial homicide. Finally, William subtly provokes him by asking if he likes the meat of young hares, describing it in a disturbing way. Not being able to contain his frustration, the Earl excuses himself due to an urgent matter. On William's way back, he senses that he's being followed, so he traps the stalker in a dead end. He already knew that the stalker was ordered by the Earl. William provokes him for a while before Louis suddenly appears behind him, holding him hostage. Later, Albert is seen visiting Eden again because there's something he wants to talk about with him. Beneath the cloudy sky, the glaring red eyes of Williams pierce through the fogginess of a cemetery. That's where he's tied up and locked the Earl inside a mausoleum. William brings Eden in, forcing the Earl to face the father of the boy he killed. It turns out that moments before this, Albert had brought Eden to William. They had a discussion about what to do with the Earl. William reminded Eden that if he wanted to avenge his son with the means he was planning, he would be deemed a criminal. However, Eden had already been determined to proceed with it, ignoring the outcome for the sake of his late son. And now, in front of the Earl, he takes out his fabric scissors from his pocket. This leads the Earl to squirm and scream in panic. Williams allows Eden to do his thing as he waits outside and smokes his cigarette. A few moments later, Eden comes out all bloody. William hands him his handkerchief and walks to the mausoleum. Blood has flooded its floor. He closes the door, closing tightly the horrendous stuff inside. Time has passed after that, and now William is taking the train to go somewhere. He has a little chat with the gentleman in front of him, pointing out the news about horse racing he's reading. This takes him back to the time he was little, precisely when he used to go around telling bettors his predictions on which horse would win the race. He claimed that his predictions were based on data and analysis, and the bettors would believe him because, on top of the fact that he was always right, he had the appearance of an upper class. Betting wasn't the only thing he was good at, though. People would come to him to consult about daily things, such as how to tend flowers properly and drive away rats. Surprisingly, his advice always turned out effective. As a result, he'd sometimes receive gifts from these people as tokens of gratitude. One day, he came home with Albert to the Moriarty family's house with a bag of cookies he got from a person he had helped. The moment he stepped out of the carriage, he immediately saw Louis doing house chores. Louis was sick at that time, so he should have been in bed. But Simon, the family's butler, forced him to do the work for the petty reason that Louis was from the lower class. He also scolded William for riding the family's carriage and wearing Albert's hand-me-down suit, and even went so far as to force William to take it off. Albert was unhappy with Simon's behaviour. He tried to talk sense into him, but suddenly, someone was calling them out from the inside for being noisy. That person came out. Simon turned his back, and he apologised to that person, calling him Master William. We now go back to when William and Louis hadn't been adopted by the Moriarty family yet. At that time, Albert would often go to the ragged school to do charity work. William, his biological younger brother, loved to make fun of him for doing it. Although irritated, Albert still went anyway. Albert, despite being young, already hated the society in which their status was determined at birth, so that's why he wanted to help the poor as much as possible. One day, he saw William and Louis in the ragged school for the first time as the brothers had just been taken recently. The teacher highlighted their brilliance. On William, she commented that he was able to leave adults speechless with his knowledge. This marks the beginning of Albert's interest in the brothers. One night, Albert's father, Earl Moriarty, attended a gathering with rich people in a club. Duchess Peniers suddenly took everyone by surprise by saying that she was taking an orphan as a foster child. She also subtly persuaded the others to do it as well in the name of charity. Lord Moriarty, who seemed to take a liking to her, agreed to do the same too. When Lord Moriarty brought it up to his wife, Countess Moriarty, the next day, she was obviously furious. She called the orphans with slurs and immediately suspected that his husband had been persuaded by Peniers. Albert overheard their fight, but he could only stay silent, even though his mum's view toward the orphans made him irritated. He just went ahead to go to the ragged school again that day. At the school, he heard the conversations of the children. Everyone was fighting to have William and Louis teach them stuff. Even the teacher had learned how to make cough medicine from them. The brothers just became more interesting to Albert. That night, his dad coincidentally asked him to pick the orphan who was going to be their foster child. Albert had no choice but to nod and say yes. The next time Albert visited the ragged school again, he caught William teaching calculations to some adults. It had something to do with how long it would take to dig a 40-yard distance soil with the number of men they had, which resulted in 1 week. When Albert approached William to praise his intelligence, the adults immediately went away to get back to work after erasing the calculations on the ground. A few days later, when Albert was about to enter the carriage to go to the ragged school, he overheard the conversation of a group of men. They were talking about the recent news regarding a robbery that occurred in a rich person's house. At first, Albert paid no attention to that, but suddenly, one of the men mentioned a 40-yard tunnel that the robbers used to sneak in. This made him frozen at once. He immediately recalled Williams's calculation earlier and thought of the possibility, but he quickly swept it away telling himself that he was just overthinking. In the orphanage, he overheard the group of children, including William, talking about the nobles. William said that they are great people who live great lives. But the other kids began to disagree and share their bad experiences with them, such as being looked down upon and discriminated against. In response to this, William validated the fact that there are bad noblemen. He then asked the other children what to do if they came across one as he had told them. With great enthusiasm, they answered, "Fight and kill them." Albert had expected anything but this. The children kept repeating that phrase. He just stood there frightened. That was when he realized that William had been taking the wrong path to achieve the right world. The next time Albert visited the ragged school, he talked to William privately and brought up the thing he had overheard before. He warned William that fighting the nobles would mean fighting the whole country, but William admitted that it was exactly what he was trying to do. Just like Albert, he hated the segregation between classes, so he wanted to erase the current class system more than anything. After William explained that, Louis suddenly came from behind Albert with a knife. Albert just stood there, not saying anything, as he was amazed by William's way of thinking. Albert no longer had a doubt. At that, instead, he invited the two brothers to live with the Moriarty with a promise that he would fulfill William's ambition. The first time William and Louis entered the Moriarty manor, they were immediately treated harshly by Simon. Lady Moriarty became furious, as she didn't expect two children would be taken under their care. She was complaining about the fact that Louis was sick, so it would be a hassle for them. William, their biological child, also made a condescending remark about the orphans. Albert, William, and Louis were silently listening to their bickering from outside, but there was nothing they could do. At the noble gathering, Lord Moriarty was praised by Peniers for adopting the brothers as his foster children. He also boasted about taking Louis to the doctor and arranging his surgery. It becomes clearer that he did all of that just to impress Peniers. One day, William, Albert's younger brother, out of nowhere, asked Louis to make him a cup of tea. Louis did what he was asked to do, but after handing the tea, William spilled it onto the carpet, saying that he wouldn't drink something made by a person of Louis's status. He then ordered him to clean the carpet with his tongue. This is when William, Louis's older brother, came to intervene. The two Williams faced each other, one trying to protect his brother, and one still can't get over having fun by mocking the lower class. The biological William then ordered the adoptive William to give his brother a lesson by injuring him with a fork, just like what he always did. The adoptive William took the fork. He looked at it deeply as Louis was getting nervous. Then, without warning, he pierced the fork into his own hand until it bled, shocking everyone in the room. The other William was very annoyed for being outsmarted. When Albert found out about this incident, he apologized to William and Louis for his brother's behavior. The next morning, while having their breakfast, William and Countess Moriarty discussed the possibility of kicking the orphans out. However, Earl Moriarty rejected the idea, saying it was impossible. He changed the topic by asking William, his biological son, if he had been helping a peddler because one of them had approached the Earl to say his thanks. William denied it. He proceeded to badmouth the peddlers, calling them dirty and smelly, so he wouldn't want to engage with them. Albert didn't say a word during the conversation. He just suddenly stood up and left the room, not being able to bear with his own family. Later, he came to the adoptive William to ask for a favor. William agreed to help, but with the condition that Albert should have the courage to kill. Albert nodded. And so that night, when the parents were sleeping soundly, William, Louis, and Albert executed their mission. The biological William suddenly entered the orphan's bedroom to put the family's cutlery inside the drawer so that he could frame them for stealing. Well, luck was apparently not on his side because the adoptive William caught him in the middle of his act. He said that it would save him the trouble of moving his body later. Hearing that, the biological William got anxious, suspecting that he would be killed. The adoptive William then smashed the stool near him and collected the broken sharp wood. Behind him, Albert showed up to deal with his brother. William nervously asked if Albert was joking, but in response, Albert got serious and mad. He expressed how disgusted he was to have a family like his own who took their status for granted, and he wanted to change it. So without hesitation, Albert stabbed his brother's stomach with the broken wood. When he was about to pick the wood off his stomach, the other William warned him not to, because it would make him lose blood faster, and he needed to stay alive until his lungs would be filled with hot smoke. It turns out that the three other kids had planned to burn down the whole manor. They did it by allowing gas to fill the whole house and sparked it with a gunshot so that it would create an explosion. In this era, gas was prevalent in British households. This made it common for gas-related accidents to happen. Therefore, these kids tried to make it look like there had been an accident in order not to draw any suspicion. Before the explosion occurred, they locked themselves in an airtight room, and when it was over, they went out and found the whole manor was on fire as they had expected. Albert and William quickly headed outside, but somehow Louis stayed behind. He collected a piece of scorching wood and deliberately burned his cheek with it. William was shocked when he saw that. But in Louis's defense, he did it to make it more convincing to the adults that it was an accident. Plus, it was his way of recompensing William and Albert for curing his illness. The three of them then held hands, symbolizing their bond as a family. The next thing we know, they've managed to escape the fire. When the authority asked about their identity, Albert introduced himself, William and Louis as Moriarty brothers. Now, back to the present time, William has just arrived in Durham after disembarking the train. He asks a local fruit seller the directions to Gertzbeck Manor. The seller immediately knows that William is the new maths lecturer at the university. Surprisingly, word's already spread around the town that there was going to be a newcomer. The seller mentions that the fact that he's a noble makes him already famous. Coincidentally, while William talks to the seller, a villager named Michelle is standing next to him picking fruits. Upon hearing that William is a noble, she gives him a glaring look. According to the seller, Michelle has a personal hate towards the nobles due to a past incident with the local viscount, Alexander Brighton, that cost her the life of her son. A few years back, Michelle and Burton, her husband who works for the viscount as a gardener, knocked on Alexander's door in the middle of a rainy night as they urgently needed Alexander's doctor to treat their severely ill son. However, Alexander refused to call his doctor even though the couple had begged. Afraid of losing his job, Burton just gave up, and in the end, his son didn't survive. Later, William arrives at his temporary residence. Louis has been waiting for him. He makes tea to welcome his brother. He then shows William an invitation for dinner that was sent by the Viscount, which is none other than Alexander. Then it's decided that the three Moriarty brothers will attend it. At night, they can be seen having a pleasant dinner with Alexander. But suddenly, in the middle of their talk, Alexander is told by his butler to drink his medicine. When asked about it, he reveals that he has a heart disease and the medicine he's been drinking is quinine. It's concocted by his personal doctor using the quina plant grown in his private conservatory. Seeing the brothers showing their interest in the conservatory, the Viscount then invites them to see his rare plant collection after dinner. As the Viscount gives a tour, William catches sight of Burton working on tending to the plants. The Viscount also introduces Burton after he leaves. He's actually proud of Burton's work, but like almost every nobleman in the country, he makes a condescending remark about him as a lower class. At the end of the tour, Alexander suggests they hold a tea party in the greenhouse the next time they visit. Meanwhile, Burton comes home and sees Michelle already set 3 places for dinner. Michelle says she saw their son crying because he was hungry in her dream. Burton gets frustrated. It's been some time since their son passed away, yet his wife still can't get over it. The next day after William finishes his lecture, he visits a local pub. There, he comes across Burton, who's drinking his worry away. William approaches Burton, saying that he saw him working in the Viscount's garden the other day. According to Burton, his grandfather and father also served as gardeners for his Viscount, so it's natural that he also does so. William then starts talking about Burton's son and wife, which makes Burton agitated. He admits that he has no power to do anything and it makes his wife hate him. In response to this, William tries to provoke Burton by saying that he's not powerless. Rather, he simply didn't do anything. He then offers Burton his service as a crime consultant. The day of the Viscount's tea party finally has come. In order to be polite, the brothers come to Alexander's house with a gift prepared. It turns out to be crackers with marmalade. Upon trying it for the first time, Alexander finds the marmalade flavour familiar, yet he can't tell what fruit it's made from. Then William reveals that it's grapefruit, one of the fruits Alexander grows in his greenhouse. Alexander himself never tried it because he thought grapefruits were only for show, but he really likes it now and can't stop munching the crackers. Louis then suggests they have grapefruit juice after seeing how much the Viscount likes it. Alexander agrees, and after that, Michelle and Burton are called to the garden to serve them grapefruit juice. Michelle cuts the fruits while Burton squeezes them. However, Michelle's grudge against Alexander makes it difficult for her to focus on her work. Not being able to contain her resentment, she approaches the Viscount with the fruit knife and kicks his chair until he falls. She then runs towards him, ready to risk it all to avenge her son. But before she can do it, Burton stops her just in time. All of a sudden, Alexander's chest hurts. William quickly gives him his quinine medicine. After that, Burton hands him a glass of grapefruit juice with an apology on behalf of his wife. The moment Alexander finishes the juice, he becomes furious. He lashes out his anger at Burton and fires him at that instant. He also threatens Michelle, saying that he'll get back at her. The couple then leaves the Viscount's manor. On their way back home, Michelle drops to her knees and cries her heart out. Burton hugs her from behind, assuring her that she did well. Meanwhile, in the garden, Alexander is still irritated about what just happened. His legs can't stop shaking, and he keeps bringing up how he hates the lower class. When the brothers remind him to stay calm and just settle things amicably, he gets even angrier. But then, suddenly, without any explanation, his body feels weak. This is when everything clicks. William, in his usual cunning manner, finally reveals the truth. It turns out that the chemical compounds found in grapefruits have a profound influence on quinine's mechanism of action, resulting in a rapid drop in blood pressure. Alexander begs for anyone to call his doctor, but of course nobody fulfills his request. As he's struggling to breathe, William proceeds to remind him of the same occurrence that happened to Burton's family. All at once, Alexander realizes that this has been a setup from the beginning. Before he takes his final breath, William declares that it's his punishment. In the end, Burton and Michelle decide to go to London so that Burton can find a better employer. Michelle's mental health has improved a lot. She has managed to reconcile with her husband. The three Moriarty brothers then send them off at the train station. Moving on to the next case, we have a man witnessing a bizarre and traumatizing occurrence. A young girl named Frida Macaulay appears on a bridge out of nowhere in the middle of the night. She sings and dances gracefully in the fog, leading the man to watch her with curiosity. But then, without warning anyone, and without stopping her dance for a second, she jumps into the river below her, as if it's part of her dance. A few days later, while doing his lecture, William notices a student named Lucian Atwood has been missing for a while. According to Lucian's close friend Tate Percival, Lucian has a cold, so he can't attend the class. Hearing this, William says that he's going to visit Lucian, but Tate quickly tells William not to worry, because they share the same dorm room. William acts like he's relieved, but secretly he knows something's wrong. So after class, he goes to search for information regarding Lucian and Tate. As expected, the two students both come from aristocratic families. William then decides to pay their dorm room a visit despite Tate's assurance that Lucian is okay. And just like he has suspected, Lucian is far from okay. In fact, he hasn't been back in 3 days. At first, Tate is reluctant to admit it to William, but after a little bit of persuasion and threats, he finally reveals everything he knows. Apparently, Lucian would sometimes stay out all night and sneak back in the morning. Every time it happened, it's likely that he went to the pub where his lover Frida worked. Yes, the same Frida as the one who died by jumping into the river. Tate himself had tried to visit the pub to ask Lucian's whereabouts, but he wasn't treated nicely there and was told to get out immediately. From the look of it, Tate genuinely wants to help Lucian if he's in trouble. However, William tells him to stay out of the matter because he's the one who's going to deal with it. Upon exiting the dorm building, William is approached by Dudley Bale, another professor at the university. Dudley asks him about his matter in the dorm, and William truthfully tells about Lucian's case. Strangely, Dudley tries to convince William that it will pass. When William suggests they should contact the police, he also reassures William that it's unnecessary. William's suspicion is raised even more the moment Dudley mentions that he has influence with the local office. Regardless, William still goes to the pub Tate was talking about. He's immediately greeted by the rude pub lady who's willing to speak, only after getting tipped by William. According to her, Frida was a charming girl who was able to lighten up everyone's mood. She was also talented in singing and dancing. It's not a surprise that Lucian fell in love with her despite their difference in status. Lucian had even proposed marriage to her. Before everyone knew it, Frida was already pregnant with Lucian's child. But then one night, the manager saw Frida talking to a man, and after that, she fell to her knees in tears. It was obvious that their relationship was over. Nevertheless, Frida was still determined to raise the child by herself. After listening to the pub lady's story, William sends telegrams to his two associates, Fred Porlock and Sebastian Moran. Then William, Lewis, and the two of them meet each other after a long time in order to execute their mission, to punish the culprit. Fred himself has already found out where Lucian is located and managed to retrieve him. However, Lucian is still under the influence of opium, so he's not in his best state. At night, Moran tries to attract the ladies in the pub by winning card games. He successfully snatches a girl to sleep with as planned. Meanwhile, Lucian starts coming to his senses. He finds himself sitting alone on a bench by the bridge where Frida died from. Suddenly, Dudley calls his name frantically. He starts scolding him and blabbering about cleaning up after him. Lucian is confused. He still can't remember anything. Dudley then explains with a raised voice that he was the one who cast Frida away from Lucian's life, because a man of Lucian's status can't be together with a commoner like Frida. Hearing Frida's name, it all comes back to Lucien. He says he truly loved Frida and wanted to marry her, but Dudley gets angry and tells him to just do as he says. Suddenly, a figure appears from below the bridge. It's none other than Frida. Lucien is still standing confused there. In contrast, Dudley totally freaks out. Out of panic, he blurts out that he already drugged Frida with opium until she fell to her death, so it's impossible that she's here. Lucien is shocked upon hearing that. Then behind Lucien, William appears, expressing his satisfaction that he's heard the word from the criminal's mouth himself. The Frida in front of them is then revealed to be Fred, who's wearing a wig. William and the others have plotted to trick Dudley into confessing his sin. In addition, William has already looked into Dudley's background and found out that he's running brothels that are disguised as hospitals, so that no one would be suspicious of him for acquiring large quantities of opiates. Dudley works by luring children of noble families into committing mischiefs, and then demanding their parents to buy his silence. William then announces that Dudley will be experiencing the same way of death as Frida's. Just as Dudley is about to mock William for how ridiculous that sounds, he gets shot with an air gun. It turns out to be Moran's doing. From the second floor of the pub where he sleeps with the woman he flirted with, he skillfully shoots Dudley in a way that makes him jump around on the bridge to avoid the bullets. It almost looks like he's mimicking Frida's dance moves. Ultimately, even after desperate attempts to keep himself steady, Dudley still slips from the bridge and eventually falls to his death. The next thing we know, Lucien has built a fine tombstone for Frida. From afar, William, Louis, Fred and Moran are watching him and commenting that if it weren't for the country's class system, Lucien and Frida would be living a happy life. The four of them then get more committed to changing it. So next, the Moriarty brothers as well as Moran and Fred hold a meeting to discuss their next move in order to erase the imbalance of status within the society. William proposes an idea that is low-key insane yet seemingly effective, and it also involves death. He plans to turn London into a city of crime with the aristocrats as the actors. With this plan, the public's perception of the nobles is expected to change drastically, making them no longer noble. Their first target is a count named Blitz Enders. He's a psycho with a superiority complex and anger issues who makes humans his hunting targets, sacrificing their lives for mere entertainment. The count is going to board the maiden voyage of a cruise called the Noarctic, which is claimed to be the first cruise ship to have a ballet performance in the world. Therefore, William and his team choose to execute their plan there. At the port, Enders complains that there are so many so-called commoners there. Fred suddenly appears behind him to say that the ship has different classes, and the prices are adjusted accordingly. Yet Enders argues that a ship as grand as Noarctic should only be exclusive for noblemen like him. When the non-noblemen are lining up to board the ship, he's able to use his nobleman card to get a fast track. As he climbs the way, he rudely knocks Thomas Michelson, a queuing person, to get off his way. This of course makes Thomas angry. Enders just sneers at him and calls him slurs to belittle him. To stop the fight, Moran, who's disguised as an onboard security guard, allows Enders to move right on. On the ship, Enders is seen having a problem entering a restaurant. The waiter says that there has been a mix-up in the reservation, so he suggests Enders go to another restaurant on the lower deck. Of course, Blitz becomes furious upon hearing that. He screams at the waiter's face, asserting that he won't be eating at the same place as the people whom he calls livestock, and he can't accept anyone not complying with him. Therefore, in nervousness, the waiter has no choice but to go find him a seat. While Ender is waiting for the waiter to come back, a little girl, one who doesn't look like she's from a noble family, accidentally spills her drink onto his clothes. Even with a child, Enders doesn't hold back his arrogance. He threatens to kill her if she does that one more time. The child cries to her mum, who has to apologize deeply. Once they're away, Enders expresses his annoyance about commoners being in the restaurant for the first-class passengers. This is when William suddenly appears. He hands Enders his handkerchief. He then introduces himself, and they exchange short conversations before the waiter comes back to give Blitz his seat. Meanwhile, Thomas, the man who was knocked by Blitz earlier, is getting a secret offer from Moran. He's ordered to annoy the Count as much as possible, and he agrees with it. According to William, Thomas has done serious crimes in the past, including murder and rape, so if there's anyone whose life could be made good use of, he's the perfect fit. At night, Fred sends Blitz a supposedly fake telegram saying his cottage has burnt down. Around this time, William is walking in the hallway when he notices an extravagant spiral staircase in front of him. He stops to take a good look at it. Then, out of nowhere, a group of women and a man approach him. One of the women explains that the man they're hanging around with is able to guess anyone's job, so they're making a bet out of it. And they ask for William's excuse to let the man guess William's job. Can you guess who this man is? Yup, He's none other than the renowned detective Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock confidently says that William is a mathematician. He can tell it by the way William looks at the stairs. It's clear that William wasn't just simply admiring it. Judging by his distance and angle, he was also observing how the stairs were supported, as if trying to confirm if the shape of the stairs was based on the golden ratio. William confirms that he is in fact a mathematics professor at university. However, he refuses to be the only one who's scrutinized, so he analyzes Sherlock back. He points out the fact that Sherlock can play the violin, is adept in physical fights, has an interest in scientific experimentation, has a drug addiction, and takes pride in his ancestry from his mother's side. Sherlock doesn't deny any of them. He just laughs and calls William intriguing. And then the ladies invite him to the upper deck, so he goes and says goodbye to William. Once Sherlock leaves, Moran approaches William to inform him about the latest situation. Enders has become so agitated. It's only about time he loses his patience. Meanwhile, Enders himself is thinking to himself that he wishes he could hunt humans now so that he could release his anger. But in an instant, he remembers that he has the privilege to do anything, even on a ship. Coincidentally, he comes across Thomas. With an evil idea in mind, he invites Thomas to his room to treat him for a drink, saying that it's an apology for hurling dreadful words at him when they were boarding. Once they enter the room, Enders doesn't forget to make sure to lock the door. Thomas doesn't seem to show any suspicion. He's just happy to be free to choose any kind of fancy drink in front of him. He even thinks of pretending to be drunk later so that he can have an excuse for annoying him. But too bad. Only a moment after he picks up a bottle, Enders comes from behind and stabs him with a knife. Thomas falls onto the floor. He's helpless. There's nothing he can do except for begging Enders to stop. Yet of course, Enders won't do that. He proceeds to stab Thomas right in the heart. Thomas lets out a scream of desperation. A few moments later, Enders is already sitting on top of Thomas's lifeless body, casually enjoying his smoke. He thinks he's safe, but suddenly William comes knocking on his door and pretending to make sure Enders is okay because a scream has just been heard. All at once, Enders' relaxation turns into terror. What makes him more shocked is that William finds out that the door isn't locked. Apparently, Moran had already unlocked it in secret earlier. William then opens the door. In front of him are two interesting things. One, Thomas's dead body, and two, Enders being frozen out of fear of getting caught as a murderer. However, to Enders' surprise, William doesn't react like he had expected. He's pretty chill for someone who's witnessing a murder. Enders frantically tries to find an alibi for this. He says that Thomas sneaked in and tried to rob his room, and Thomas was the one who attacked him first, so this was a result of self-defense. William pretends that he believes in Enders' claim for the reason that a nobleman like him wouldn't do something so lowly, such as killing a commoner, just to make him more nervous because he in fact would do it often. He then suggests they dump Thomas's body into the sea because it's the best way to hide the evidence. Enders agrees. The two of them then work together to throw out the body off the balcony. But little does Enders know, Moran and Fred are actually collecting it below. The next day, the passengers get excited to see the ballet stage. Enders himself watches the performance from a private box seat with a man he invited. But when the first act is over, the man excuses himself as he has a seat saved on the first floor for the second act. After he leaves, William suddenly shows up to bring bad news. He whispers to tell Enders that he saw Thomas on the first floor, and he isn't wrong. There's actually a figure that 99% resembles Thomas below. Enders goes frantic. He's afraid that Thomas will tell the authorities that he tried to kill him if it turns out that Thomas is still alive. He runs as fast as he can towards the seat where Thomas was sighted. However, when he arrives, Thomas is no longer there. The person beside him says that he's already gone outside. It is then revealed that the Thomas shown by William was actually Fred in disguise. The team has made sure to lead Enders to the room under the stage. They've also set up the real corpse of Thomas there. The knife used by Enders to kill him is still inside his chest. Upon arriving and seeing Thomas, Enders turns mad. He feels like he's been played by a dead person. To ensure that Thomas won't come back to life, he maniacally stabs him countless times. This is when William's team reaches the climax of their mission. With a pull of a lever, the floor where Enders and Thomas's corpse are placed slowly rises. It takes a while for Enders to realize that he's now on the stage. The passengers are left agape as they're watching Enders murdering a commoner. Albert, who's watching from a box, deliberately shouts Enders' name, acting like he's surprised. The other spectators immediately recognize him as the Count. They start to bring up the rumor about him hunting humans on his hunting grounds. At first, Enders is frightened, but then he stands up and bravely says that killing a commoner is justified for a nobleman like him. Still, the others don't give him any signs of agreement. Instead, the man who watched the first act with him earlier decides to speak up, warning him that it's wrong no matter how he puts it. Enders becomes even more mad. He jumps and aims his knife at the man. Thankfully though, Sherlock shows up, and his quick reflexes and combat skills allow him to save the man just in time. People proceed to shout for Enders to be arrested. The table has turned now for Enders. He, who's used to hunt people, is now being hunted. He runs like his life depends on it to escape from the guards. He's now experiencing what his past victims had experienced. When he can no longer run, he climbs the ship's mast and grips it with his whole body as a last resort, so confident that nobody can catch him up there. However, with only a bullet to his foot from Moran's gun, he slides a few feet down. Moran fires another bullet at Enders' hand as he desperately tries to reach the rope. And with that, Enders loses his entire grip and plunges free into the sea. Later, William's team holds another meeting when they're back in London. Moran has just been back from the town, so he's informing the others about people's reactions to Enders' case, which is not good at all, meaning it went according to their plan. The team has also managed to clean up the mess thanks to Albert's influence. However, there's one thing that's been bothering William. As they were disembarking the ship, Sherlock approached him to talk about Enders' case. Apparently, the moment everybody came out of the theatre and watched Enders meet his demise, Sherlock stayed behind on the stage to examine Thomas's corpse. Based on his inspection, he believed Thomas didn't really die on that day, but the night before. Also, the fact that Enders said, "What's wrong with killing a commoner?" made Sherlock sure that Enders was conscious that he had already killed his victim, even before everyone witnessed him doing it. Because these things didn't add up to him, Sherlock hypothesized that there was a third party who set up the whole incident. The problem is, he didn't find any proof to support it. Through that conversation, William could tell that Sherlock has the probability of becoming a threat to the team. A few days later, Sherlock, as if he has no worries, is preparing to go outside of his residence at 221B Baker Street. But of course, he can't even go past the fence because the landlady, Mrs. Hudson, immediately yells at him the moment he opens the door. She demands him to pay off the rent fees he hasn't paid for a while unless he wants to get kicked out. Instead of doing what he's asked to, the broke Sherlock begs on his knees to persuade Mrs. Hudson to give him more time, but it seems like she has reached her limit. Coincidentally, Sherlock's friend, Dr. Stamford, also happens to pass by. Like the brat he is, Sherlock asks Stamford to lend him some money to pay the rent. After listening to Sherlock's problem, Stamford suggests Sherlock gets a roommate so that he can split the rent, lightening his burden. This sounds like a good idea to Sherlock. He immediately tries to put it into practice and holds some kind of audition in front of Mrs. Hudson to recruit his prospective roommate. He's managed to gather and introduce a struggling actor, a drag queen, and an old man, but each person just makes Mrs. Hudson even angrier. In the end, Sherlock comes back to Dr. Stamford to ask for his advice. Thankfully, Stamford knows a potential person to be Sherlock's roommate. He's none other than John H. Watson. Later, Watson can be seen arriving at 221B Baker Street. He knocks on the door, but no one is there to answer, so he opens it by himself. Upon entering, he's immediately welcomed by a strange odor. He climbs the stairs and sees Sherlock, lying unconscious in a pool of blood. He runs toward him, checking his vital signs. Everything seems fine, yet he can't locate where the blood comes from. Suddenly, Sherlock wakes up. He grabs Watson's pocket watch, surprised to find out that he slept for so long. He immediately stands up and checks his experiment. It turns out that the blood is not his, but Cow's. He's been working on an agent that reacts to blood in order to make solving murder cases easier and faster. In the middle of his lengthy explanation about the agent, he realizes that a stranger, aka Watson, has come to his house. Watson then introduces himself as Sherlock's roommate sent by Stamford. But before even finishing his sentence, Sherlock cuts him to guess that Watson is a doctor who's just back from the Afghan war and is now retired. He can tell this by the way Watson checked his vitals, his sunburn mark, his pocket watch, which is only exclusive for those discharged from the army, and the fact that he's looking for a cheap place to stay. Watson confirms all of that. He seems truly amazed by Sherlock's exceptional deduction skills. Sherlock then invites Watson to dinner with Mrs. Hudson so that she can know him better. During the dinner at first, Mrs. Hudson still acts annoyed and angry. Sherlock then leaves the two to go to the toilet for a while. When he's back, he's so surprised to see they've mingled really well. Suddenly, Sherlock is approached by an officer from the Scotland Yard, specifically Inspector Lestrade. He gets excited. He thinks that Lestrade has come to give him a case to solve, but he's entirely wrong. Instead, he gets arrested for being a suspect in a murder. Apparently, this night, a count named Enoch J. Drebber has just been murdered. They found a message written in blood next to his dead body, and the message said, Sherlock. This has led the police to believe that Sherlock is the murderer. Therefore, Lestrade has no choice but to bring Sherlock to the station, even though he's hesitant. Sherlock is pretty chill though. He knows he didn't do that. Watson and Mrs. Hudson also follow him to the station so that they can give testimony. In the station, Sherlock finds out that it's Assistant Inspector Gregson who takes advantage of the situation. He's despised Sherlock for a while, so he's twisting the pieces of evidence to make it look like Sherlock's guilty. In truth, Sherlock can easily refute all of his claims, but he chooses to just cooperate. Lestrade himself knows that Sherlock wouldn't do something like that. Therefore, Sherlock asks Lestrade to bring him to the crime scene in the hope of finding the true killer, with a promise that he'd give Lestrade all the credit. After all, it's clear that the killer is luring Sherlock to them. Lestrade agrees, so under the police's supervision, he brings Sherlock to Count Dreber's mansion. Apparently, the Count lives with 2 maids and a butler in that mansion. It was one of the maids who found him dead. At the estimated time of death, she was waiting for her lover for a date, but he never showed up. Another maid was informed that her father suddenly collapsed, so she rushed back to her parents' house only to find out that he was okay. The butler, who drinks whiskey occasionally in his room, was totally wasted at the time of death because his drink had been drugged. The Count also has a cook who lives in a detached house, but he's old and has a hearing problem, so it's not possible for her to hear any gunshots. The Count himself was shot 4 times to the chest, and according to Watson, there's no sign of struggle. As Watson is analysing the corpse, Sherlock finds an object and secretly puts it inside his pocket. After that, Sherlock begins to tell his analysis. According to him, the culprit was the one who wrote the message. This is because the Count's fingers are too narrow for the width of the lettering. Since the width of fingers is usually proportional to hand and physical size, the killer should be someone who is larger than the Count. Sherlock also thinks that the killer is an amateur. It can be seen from their arbitrary way of shooting the victim. Plus, the fact that they went to great lengths to make sure there was no one in their way means they had a backup, or rather, a mastermind. Sherlock believes that it's a similar case to the murder on the cruise. The murderer is nothing but a tool, but it's the puppeteer who actually staged the crime. And then, before Gregson and Lestrade bring Sherlock back to the station, Sherlock inserts a note into Watson's pocket. Meanwhile, William can be seen talking to a man named Jefferson Hope. He asks the man if he's prepared to die in order to take his revenge. Without any doubt, the man says yes. He also has an incurable disease, meaning he won't live for long. William then deems this man to be the perfect fit for executing his plan to test Sherlock. Back to Sherlock, he tries to convince Lestrade to let him escape. He promises the inspector that he just wants to solve the mystery, and he'll give Lestrade the credit if he catches the true culprit. Therefore, Lestrade, who drives the carriage, deliberately acts like he makes a mistake midway, leading the carriage to turn over. Sherlock uses this opportunity to run away from the police. He meets with Watson under a bridge, just as he had instructed in the note. Then he shows Watson a ring he had secretly collected from the crime scene, which he claims can be used to lure the killer. Next, we can see Hope reporting to Fred that he left his ring at the crime scene and needs to get it back at all costs. The thing is, Sherlock apparently has announced the missing ring in the Lost and Found section of the newspaper. Now, back to 221 B Baker Street. When Watson is home inspecting the ring, someone knocks on their door. He opens it, and in front of him is an old woman claiming to be the mother of the ring's owner, Lucy. There is indeed an inscription of her name on the inner side of the ring, and the description she gives matches the characteristics of the ring. Therefore, Watson hands it to her. This has been obviously a trap. Once the woman starts to get what she asks for and walks away, Sherlock carefully follows her from behind. The woman makes a turn into an alley, but when Sherlock enters that exact alley, she's immediately gone. He then runs away in every direction until they eventually meet face to face. Sherlock must have already smelled that she's not actually who she appears to be. He successfully lands a blow to her face. This causes whatever she's wearing on her face to crack, revealing a part of Fred's face. But before Sherlock can even take off the whole mask, Fred quickly escapes from him. Sherlock just knows that he's one of the mastermind's men. At night, Sherlock takes Watson to ride a carriage. Inside, he gives Watson the data he's retrieved from Lestrade. Apparently, Count Dreber was an infamous philanderer. He'd often rape and abuse women of lower standing and gave them money for settlement. However, one woman named Lucy Ferrier came back to her husband, Jefferson Hope, already lifeless with horrifying bruises. Sherlock reveals that her husband turns out to be the killer of Dreber and also the driver of the cab they're currently riding. He could tell it from observing the carriage track he saw when he visited Dreber's residence the other day. He's also asked for his little helpers to find someone who matches the suspect's characteristics, and they manage to narrow it down to Hope. From the top of the carriage, Hope smirks at Sherlock's cunningness. Without denying anything, he admits that he's the killer. Suddenly, he asks Sherlock to make a deal with him, and the next thing we know, they're already gathering in front of a church. Hope first mentions his benefactor, which, according to him, is the one who's given him life. He then offers to reveal the true identity of this benefactor, but in order to do that, Sherlock must kill him first. At this point, Hope doesn't see any point in living, so if he were to die in someone's hand, he'd rather it be Sherlock's because he's uncovered Drebber's atrocity. He then passes his gun to Sherlock. On top of the roof of one building, Fred is watching and waiting. Hope points at Fred, promising that Fred will reveal the mastermind after Sherlock kills him. Sherlock genuinely looks curious. On the other hand, Watson frantically warns Sherlock not to listen to Hope, because Sherlock will be a criminal himself if he does kill him. But Hope ensures that they will tailor his own death in such a way that Sherlock won't be a suspect. Sherlock then slowly picks up the gun. He aims it at Hope. Watson keeps telling him to stop, but it doesn't look like he's listening. Then he finally pulls the trigger. A few moments later, it's revealed that Sherlock only shot the ground, not Hope. He then laughs and says that he never intended to kill Hope in the first place. When asked if he doesn't want to know the mysterious mastermind, Sherlock answers that it's not fun for him to only take the answer from someone else without solving the mystery himself. But a few moments later, Sherlock gets serious and truly apologizes to Hope for not being able to grant his last wish. He then brings Hope to the Scotland Yard and fulfills his promise to Lestrade. Later, William and his team discuss what happened with Sherlock and Hope. William then concludes that Sherlock is worthy to be taking the role of solving the crime drama that they'll continue to stage in London. Ever since Sherlock became famous for solving Drebber's case, he's had plenty of personal clients looking for his help in solving their cases. However, with each passing day, Watson notices that Sherlock has become gloomier and gloomier. One day, when taking a rest, Sherlock vents his boredom to Watson. He thinks the daily cases he solves are nothing but superficial mysteries. He wishes to solve something bigger, something like who is actually behind the murder of Drebber, who challenged him to solve it. He then tries to calm himself by playing the violin, but even as he plays, the image of Hope is still haunting him. He still can't comprehend why he's being tested by that mastermind. Over the course of time, Sherlock begins to think that he should have killed Hope for the sake of quenching his curiosity. As he's still imagining the image of that day, he takes out his gun, aims it at his imaginary Hope, and pulls the trigger. This makes people inside the building, including Watson and Mrs. Hudson, freak out and check on him out of worry. Even Lestrade, who's trimming his beard at a barbershop nearby, runs as fast as he can to Sherlock's house with shaving cream still on his face. When Lestrade arrives, Sherlock admits that he deliberately shot the gun to call Lestrade because he knows Lestrade usually gets a trim if he's off duty at this hour. Sherlock then asks him if any aristocrats have died in recent days, just to make sure. According to Lestrade, there hasn't been any unusual case. However, the Viscount of Redshire reportedly passed away on a lakefront in York. The thing is, it's regarded as a natural death because he has a chronic illness, and there are no signs of criminal activity. After hearing this, Sherlock immediately prepares himself to go to York to investigate it, bringing Watson and Lestrade with him. Lestrade complains a little bit, but if Sherlock has decided on something, he knows he won't be able to refuse it. In York, Sherlock tries to investigate the place where the Viscount's body was found. While Watson suspects there isn't any clue left to be found, Sherlock still insists on searching. In the end, they go back to the train station to go back to London after not finding anything. Because of this, Sherlock is in a terrible mood. He and Watson end up fighting only because Watson reminds him not to act like a child if something doesn't go his way and tells him to stop smoking so much. This makes Sherlock even more mad. He says that it's all Watson's fault. If Watson hadn't held him back from shooting Hope that day, he'd have known who's the mastermind behind the crimes by now. Watson is deeply disappointed by Sherlock for thinking that way. He throws Sherlock's train ticket right at his face and walks away. On the train, Sherlock finds out that Watson has locked him out of their cabin. He then decides to go to the dining car to eat. When he's about to order, he's suddenly distracted by something else and runs to another table. It turns out that William and Louis are there. He sits by Louis and cheerfully greets them. The first thing William does is commend Sherlock for solving Drebber's case. On the other hand, Louis immediately shows a disapproving expression. Sherlock says that he believes the Noartic case and Drebber's case are connected. What makes him sure is the fact that both of the involved aristocrats' wrongdoings came to light following the cases. Plus, they were staged by an unknown mastermind. Sherlock also tells William about the strange proposal made by Hope. He proceeds to reveal something shocking. Apparently, Sherlock has visited Hope in jail, and Hope secretly told him the name of the mastermind. And that mastermind is William. Hearing this, Louis goes through every possibility in his head. He questions whether Sherlock is bluffing or not. On the one hand, it wouldn't be difficult for someone like Sherlock to retrieve information about William, but on the other hand, they've been making sure that Hope hasn't had any contact with anyone. So if William denies based on that, Sherlock will instantly know that William is the culprit. However, William is smarter than that. While Louis is overthinking, he calmly tells Sherlock to try to prove it himself if he's so sure. Sherlock then laughs, admitting he's just kidding. After that, Sherlock is approached by Lestrade. He and the Moriarty brothers then introduce each other when suddenly they hear a scream. The four of them then go to check where it comes from. Apparently, a woman just peeked inside a cabin and saw a dead man who's seemingly killed in a messy way. The cabin itself is locked, so no one can get in. Sherlock then proposes an idea to William, which is to compete to see who can find the murderer quicker. Suddenly, behind Sherlock, Watson appears with his suit all bloody. The guards also come to check the situation. Seeing the murdered man and Watson's bloody suit, they're quick to think that Watson is the murderer. But in Watson's defense, someone ran into him as he was leaving the toilet, smearing the blood onto his clothes. Still, the security guards don't seem to believe his alibi. Sherlock then gets impatient and yells at the guards for wasting time. It will be around 48 minutes until the train gets to the next stop, so they need to find the killer as soon as possible before they have a chance to get off the train. Lestrade also tries to convince them to let Sherlock deal with the case. Finally, they agree, even though they still have to put Watson in custody. Then once the guards go away, Sherlock picks the lock of the cabin door and opens it. Only after taking a good look at the crime scene, both Sherlock and William are able to deduce a lot of things. First, the killer is a male, judging by his footprints and foot size. Second, he boarded from Durham just like William because the footprints had mud. William himself confirms that Durham was raining, so the streets got muddy. Third, the man's whiskey had been drugged, so the killer tried to intentionally put him to sleep. Fourth, there's a bloody handprint on the site of the bleeding, but there's no blood on the victim's hand, meaning the killer tried to stop him from bleeding to death. Fifth, there are knife marks on the victim's briefcase, likely indicating that the killer tried to pry it open. Based on these pieces of information, Sherlock and William conclude that the murder is unintentional. Rather, it was a robbery that turned into a murder. The killer tried to steal the contents of the man's suitcase, so he put a drug in the whiskey. But for some reason, the drug wasn't strong enough, so the man woke up, catching the culprit in the middle of the act. The two of them then fought, and the robber ended up slashing the victim's neck. However, he didn't think the victim would bleed so much, so he tried to stop it, even though he still failed in the end. So he got out, took the weapon with him, locked the door to minimize his risk of being caught, and ran to the toilet where he bumped into Watson. Lestrade is amazed by the intelligence of these two, especially William. He's used to seeing Sherlock's exceptional intelligence, but it's the first time he works with William, so he feels like he's seeing two Sherlocks. After examining the list of passengers, William privately reveals his idea to Louis. He knows that Sherlock will mainly use circumstantial evidence to narrow down the killer. William himself can do it if he wants, but he decides to go with another method, and that is by analysing the criminal's psychological profile. William then points out several things to Louis that he didn't discuss with Sherlock. As it appears, the killer immediately ran to the bathroom after leaving the cabin. He most likely threw the weapon and the key to the cabin from the bathroom window, as well as washing the blood from his clothes. The thing is, he could have just tossed his clothes as well, but he didn't do it. So most likely the killer isn't someone who can take off or change his clothes as he likes. Also, similar footprints can also be found everywhere on the train, despite their size differences, and they come from one source, the crewman's cabin. If the killer is a crewman, it explains why the killer could serve drink to a first-class passenger, and why he can't take off his jacket as well as his crew gloves. And then the next thing we know, the 6 crewmen on board are gathered. First, Sherlock orders the crew members who have a shoe size of 10 inches to step forward. 2 men do it. Each of them is asked to show their gloves. 1 man does it, and nothing suspicious is found with his gloves. When they move to the second man, Lestrade immediately notices that his hands are wet. This crewman himself is reluctant to show his hands, but after being forced, he does what he's told to. The other crew members are shocked to see his hands full of blood. Sherlock then announces the man, Eddie Hawthorne, to be the killer. However, in Eddie's defense, the blood comes from when he accidentally cut his hands. Lestrade demands him to prove it, and turns out his hands are indeed wounded. But still, Sherlock can't be fooled. He knows that Eddie is prevaricating. Suddenly, William steps forward. He asks why Eddie's blood flew up to his glasses if it's only from minor cuts through the gloves. This leaves Eddie stunned. He's out of words, not being able to give any more excuses. Then eventually he confesses that he was eyeing the victim's belongings because he knew the victim was a jeweler, but he never meant to kill. Finally, the case is solved and Watson is released. After parting with the others, William reveals to Louis that the blood on Eddie's glasses was actually his own blood. He had anticipated the killer to be evasive, so he planted fake evidence, which is his own blood, into each of the crewmen before Sherlock gathered them, and thanks to this, the killer immediately confessed. Back in London, Sherlock has a drink with Watson. He also apologizes for acting childish before in his unusual way. In the end, they finally make up. Meanwhile, in the Queen's Palace, Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's older brother, is reporting about the disappearance of the kingdom's confidential documents, which are said to hold Great Britain's greatest secrets. The Queen then gives Mycroft the right to use any means in order to retrieve the documents, no matter how ruthless. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.